2 weeks ago, on July 1st, he officially began his work as president of Rutgers, as the 21st president in 250 years. That means he's going to be here for quite a few years. President Holloway is very well known for his honesty and integrity. He's, I'm told, an intellectual but very down to earth, and he is very even-handed. I and many of my Rutgers colleagues heard him speak rather compellingly about Black Lives Matter last month on an international video presentation from Australia, of all places. I understand that President Holloway has visited Ghana. Perhaps he will give us a hint about his experience there and other linkages to the continent. What he may yet have to learn about is that Rutgers is very much engaged both with Africa and with the African diaspora. As part of that, we, as Osena mentioned, we also do our best to bring together many African-American students at Rutgers with Africa. And I'm sure that Osena and Kevin Lyons and Ron and Abina and the many others associated with Mandela Washington Fellow training over the years, as well as the many from the Center for African Studies and other colleagues, will ensure that President Holloway stays at least partially focused, not just on the business of Rutgers, but on keeping Rutgers as one of the leading universities in the world engaged in education, research, and service with Africa and Africans. We know how difficult COVID-19 has been here in the U.S., and we wish you, our many distinguished Mandela Washington Fellow alumni in Africa, the best during this trying time. We know firsthand about your creativity, your intellect, your empathy, your entrepreneurial drive, your productivity, both here during your 6 weeks here and your time back home, and your continuous commitment to service. We are very happy to remain coupled to you and partner with you during this rather unique year, the pandemic, the global Black Lives Matter movement, and much more. I'd love to hear what the historians will say about this year, as Osena mentioned. Okay, enough from me. Let's hear from the historian. I feel extremely honored to introduce you to Rutgers' new president, Jonathan Holloway.
I just wanted to say that these fellowship programs are so important because, for the reasons that have already been outlined, that they make this very large and fractured world seem more accessible, more manageable, and it creates the opportunities for repair that we heard from the professor at the very beginning of this broadcast. And this is a moment, my goodness, when we need repair. We need repair in the world of public health, in the world of epidemiology. We need repair in the way in which historians and literary figures and documentary historians, filmmakers, politicians, political scientists are going to be telling the story of this moment to make sure that when the next pandemic comes, and it will, that we'll be much more prepared, much more mature, much more able to recognize one another's humanity and proceed in a way that mitigates this danger before it escalates out of control like it seems to have done now. It's also a moment of incredible need for repair for this global Black Lives Matter moment. Now, as a historian, I write about these kinds of histories, but I'd be lying to you if I said that we all saw this coming. I think the combination of so many different events lined up in such a way that we now have this global moment of racial recognition, which I take it to be, I understand it as a moment when people all over the world are saying, we want to be respected as citizens, we want to be acknowledged, we want our voices to be heard. And I know that that's so much of the work that all of you are doing speaks to that or addresses that kind of request, that kind of demand for recognition. And for that reason, too, I want to acknowledge and thank you for all that you've done. Now, I've just arrived at Rutgers, so there's so many things I don't know about the place. I'm learning more every single day. But I do know that we've been hosting these reunions for, I think meetings for 6 years now. And that next summer, we'll be hosting 2 institutes, the only one of 27 different host universities to do so in this country. And for me, that's exciting. I came to Rutgers understanding that it was a place of innovation, of opportunity, and a place that understood and embraced its own diversity. And that diversity is not just about the color of one's skin, but one's material circumstances, one's worldviews, one's sense of the national and the international. So knowing that the Mandela Washington Fellowship Program is part of the Rutgers family, to me, speaks very loudly about some core qualities that Rutgers represents to the world. So you are a point of pride for me, and I'm just meeting you. So thank you for all that you've done in the past and you will continue to do. This reunion is an opportunity to celebrate your incredible accomplishments. And there's too many to list, and I don't want to single out any one particular person, but I do know that you've been collectively have been doing work that is changing the quality of life in local communities, in regional areas, and at national scales. And I just want to implore all of you, even during moments that are daunting like this one, to continue to do that work, to continue to understand the transformative power that each of you as an individual possesses, but that as together as a fellowship becomes so much more effective, so much more compelling, and so much more rich with the possibility of repair. This moment, this reunion is a time to celebrate each other, certainly, and to recognize your excellence, but it is a moment to be reminded of the work that has yet to be done, that the work that some of our politicians are making it hard to do, but the work without you would certainly not be done at all. So thank you for all that you have done. Thank you for the honor that you bring to Rutgers. Thank you for the ways in which you represent excellence that needs to be understood as a global phenomenon, that excellence can be found everywhere, and that you've blessed us with your great skills and your great talents to make Rutgers a better place. We are in your debt. I want to emphasize that. We are in your debt, and we recognize that we will only look better by sponsoring you, by supporting you, and by trumpeting your successes in your homes. And we are there all along the way and could not be happier to have you with us. Well, we could be happier if you were actually with us, literally. But given this challenge of the moment that you've joined us on this video conference, it's a great moment for all of us. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you very much. Usaina, are we ready?
Yes. Thank you so much, President Holloway. We are really grateful to you for your time. We know you are very busy, but this means a lot to us. Thank you. Thank you so much. And we'll continue to contribute to your effort for repairing and rebuilding by bringing the Mandela Washington Fellows in the project as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to now introduce my colleague, my dear colleague and leader of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, Business and Entrepreneurship, Professor Kevin Lyons from the Business School.
Thank you, Usaina. Thank you, President Holloway and Eric. This is really a great opportunity for all of us to get together again. It's been a while since we've been together. The good thing is that you guys haven't aged a bit. You all look just as young as you were when you were here. I really wanted to just say a couple quick things. Even though you guys have come and gone back home, the nice thing is a lot of you have remained in touch with us. The accomplishments that you have done as far as your careers and your education is very admirable. I continue to interact with most of you, which is really great to hear that you still want to be connected to Rutgers. So the Rutgers community misses you. Obviously, the city of New Brunswick definitely misses you. You know, when you guys are here, the whole entire city of New Brunswick becomes a completely different place, and the community and our students all enjoy the time that you spend on campus. And so I'll say in parting that the bus is waiting outside of Joe and Greg's building right now. Do you have 5 minutes? you have 5 minutes to get to the bus so we can start our virtual program. No, thank you very much for all of you attending, and I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kevin Lyon. I also would like to introduce another leader of the Mandela Washington Fellowship Institute from the business side, Dr. Joanna Bernstein. And thank you, Joanna, for actually spearheading with Greg and with Asenat and with Magda Como, putting together this wonderful initiative. Thank you, Joanna, for your leadership in that.
Thank you. I know that some of you from the earlier years don't know me. I work with Kevin Lyons on the Business Institute. And it's really a great pleasure to see everybody. I am so thrilled to see how many people were able to come. You guys are going to hear from me later as one of the moderators for the panel, for one of the panels, so I'm not going to say too much now. Magda, do you want to say hello?
Hi. I miss all of you. I'm scrolling through all the pictures and I've got tears in my eyes because I feel like it's been a long time and I wish this was an opportunity to meet you in person, but I'm grateful for video conferencing and I'm excited to see and hear what will happen today.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Magda. Magda is a faculty in the business school. So thank you. We are really grateful to each one of you for your impact. I want to turn now to Professor Dr. Ron Quincy, one of our senior leader of the Mandela Washington Civic Leadership Institute. Dr. Ron Quincy has been at the root of the program of the Mandela Washington Fellowship that we started at Rutgers 6 years ago. We started with the grant. And he has led it for several years. I have joined him as a faculty, and Professor Abena Busia, Her Excellency now, Ambassador Abena Busia, who is also a faculty at Rutgers University, English Department and Women's Studies, have joined me and Professor Ron Quincy to lead the Mandela Washington Fellowship since the beginning. And it's really a great honor that Dr. Ron Quincy, you agreed to come again to honor by welcoming President Holloway and welcoming back all the Mandela Washington Fellows over the years. So we are grateful to you for all the services over the years and your impact, and also the time that you take to go back to Africa for follow-up. That means a lot to Rutgers, and I want to use this opportunity to thank you for that service and also the time we collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor, and thank you, President Holloway. To all of our Rutgers Mandela Washington Fellows, I greet you with sincere warmth and love and appreciation for all that you have done for this university and the communities around our state that you have served in your internship experiences. When I first met the cohort of 2014, I wrote on the smart board, "A new power is born." And that new power was all of you. Now well over 4,000 nationwide across the continent, serving your countries in such extraordinary ways in civil society organizations, those of you who have founded business enterprises, those of you who work for your governments, those of you who are working in faith-based organizations across the continent. We applaud your work. We applaud your commitment to your nation and the people that you serve. That new power is embedded in the legacy of Nelson Mandela, President Nelson Mandela. And all of you know that I had the blessing of knowing him personally, traveled with him personally, was guest at his home, and learned so much by his side. He told me that he was just a country boy who had a vision for social change in his country of South Africa. He told me that any leader must have resistance and persistence and resolve and must seek reconciliation. He told me that his first tribal name, what it meant pulling the branch of a tree or simply being a troublemaker. Being a troublemaker. He was one of the world's greatest troublemakers. He was a troublemaker for peace and for justice and for reconciliation. He was a troublemaker for those who he mentored and those who still to this day worship his name and his legacy across the globe. The final major speech or sermon given by Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. King talked about being drum majors, that drum major instinct. Leaders who are able to seize the moment, no matter what level you are or position that you have in society. He said, be a drum major for peace and be a drum major for justice and righteousness. So as I charged you all in 2014 during the first program and every summer that we have been together at Rutgers since, for you to be drum majors for positive purpose, for productive purpose, and to be drum majors for troublemakers who seek the best that can be put before us as a global citizenry. So thank you again for rejoining Rutgers. You know that I'll be back on the continent as soon as travel restrictions are relieved. Sir Phil, you know I'll be in Ethiopia with you and your colleagues there. And Samira, you know that I will be in Ghana working with bringing a nonprofit healthcare organization back to your home country. And Martha, you know my Rutgers students, we raised money, which you now have in hand to help create the Women's Social Enterprise Project. And Martha, we're coming back to Tanzania. And in Kenya, we're going back to Mama Sarah Obama's village, where Rutgers students have raised money to build a mini library. And the students would be pleased to see that project is going forward. And Ditas, thank you so much for creating that amazing cooperative that you put together for over 300 farmers in Kenya, the mango farmers, and the work that you're doing is fabulous. To all of the Mandela Fellows who set foot on the Rutgers campus, we love you, we appreciate you, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Quincy, for this powerful, wonderful welcome back. So I would like to introduce Her Excellency Professor Abena Busia, one of the leaders of Rutgers Universities in advancing African studies, gender and women's studies, and the art, and also bringing to Rutgers University all the breadth and wealth of opportunities of women's organizations that she has led over the years. The groundbreaking African Women Development Funds, now being one of the few African women ambassadors to do the crossing the Atlantic to bring Brazil to Rutgers University through her diplomacy, her diplomatic work, and also to bring us into conversation as we are talking about crisis. What is going on, for instance, in Brazil during COVID? what is happening with these questions of inequalities, and how are we going to step in looking at Rutgers as the place where also when we had crisis in the continent with the Ebola crisis, the role of Africans in solving problems and bringing it to the fore. So what do we learn from the African leadership experiences as we are trying to deal with the experience of COVID in North America, in Europe, in Asia? Are there lessons from Africa that we can learn from? And so being an African in the other side of Africa, in Brazil, and being also of the beloved community of Rutgers, I think it's wonderful to have the perspective of women leaders, African women leaders in the world, in having this conversation. So thank you, Her Excellency, Ambassador Professor Abena Busia, our great poet. So I was just telling President Holloway that in the African tradition, we will have our own poets welcoming him. And we will have our own poet welcoming back the Mandela Washington Fellows. So we're still great, thanks to the technology that you are here with us. So welcome.
Oh, my dear sister, thank you. And it is actually, I must confess, a little selfishly, that the only consolation about this being a COVID meeting is that everybody is in the same situation as me, far away and social distancing, because I really have missed this gathering this last 2 years. So it's wonderful to see you all, and welcome President Holloway. And when I show up in the spring in New Brunswick, I will try to have a praise poem prepared. But you know, as this is the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and as the name of the father, Nelson Mandela, has already been invoked, I would like us to pause briefly to recognize that as we meet now, the funeral of his daughter, Zinziwe Mandela, the president of the Mandela Foundation, is currently taking place. It started half an hour before our meeting. So we give thanks to the Mandela family for their vision and sacrifice, and we send up prayers and an invocation that her soul may rest in peace. It's a very tragic early loss to pass away with so much promise at 59. And some of us are old enough to remember the 15-year-old young girl who stood up there in the Johannesburg Stadium and read that "My father says" defiant letter to the world with such courage and verve and aplomb. So we give thanks for her life.
Thank you so much, Her Excellency Professor Abena Busia.
So I just wanted to, I was interrupted by a voice, I didn't know where it was coming from. But just quickly, what I wanted to say on my own behalf was really that for those of us who have spent our careers resisting and in fact recognizing and trying to establish new narratives on Africa, resisting the old and trying to establish the new, this Mandela Washington Fellowship represents a singularly important initiative. And if you fellows wonder why the professors you meet on it are so passionate, it's because we recognize that it's the result of a vision established by someone who truly understands not only the need for transformation, but the structures needed to make that transformation possible, and did his part on this side of the Atlantic to try to make sure that vision continued. And as was said by somebody at our very first meeting, it's the sort of 21st century equivalent of the Peace Corps in terms of vision and hopes for institution building. With the difference, though, that this initiative is looking for young leaders on the African continent. That is you. And that it's a vision that has succeeded in finding a way to bring you together so that you're meeting each other and forming networks with each other, as well as joining with those of us who have spent our professional lives here in the United States and sharing. And I'm sure you all understand that it is a sharing. This fellowship gives the opportunity for multiple conversations in a new way of learning, for you all to go back home and transform the places and organizations and institutions that you represent. And that is what is so special. And as my sister Usaina has said, just the experience of having been with you for 2 years has really helped me in my work here. We're coming not just to Brazil, but I represent, in fact, the whole of continental South America for Ghana, recognizing how much of that African story remains hidden and in need of exploring and strengthening. And I think there needs to be a Mandela Washington Africa cell for Afro-descended people here on this continent. That would really be a game changer. So it's wonderful to have an opportunity to say hello again and to welcome you all and to look forward to our continuing conversation. Bless you and bless you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Her Excellency, Professor Abena Busia. So you see what is the beloved community of Rutgers has in for you. And so each year, whenever you come for the past 6 years, New Jersey community always ask us, where are the fellows? Like this year, they're asking, well, we understand this COVID is preventing us to have the privilege to host the Mandela Washington Fellows. And this is beyond the Rutgers community. You have populated every space of New Jersey with your mark of leadership. So what my sister, Ambassador Professor Abena Busia is talking about, and Dr. Quincy and Vice President Gafunka is saying, right, is that what they're saying is that you bring the best of Africa through the work you are doing, and you are the ambassadors through the work you do with the community. You are bringing it to the world, and so we are really grateful to Rutgers University for putting the resources to allow Rutgers Global and Rutgers Center for African Studies to join this initiative of President Obama, which the State Department has embraced even after his presidency, to say this matter, Africa matters, and all this kind of initiatives do matter. And the young African leaders who are doing good within the African continent, their stories need to be told so that the lesson of those narratives, it's not only about narrative, it is actually action, the practice. The different elements that Dr. Quincy highlighted are very important. And Dr. Kevin Lyons has done a lot of work trying to bring New Jersey business and African business communities together through the work of the Mandela Washington Fellows. So this is really a great vision of President Obama, and a great vision for the American State Department to continue investing in this, to bring goodness. What a Nobel Peace Laureate said, let's bring goodness, and goodness in its diversity, in its intersectionality, to cultivate a world community rather than as community is in isolation, where we don't know each other. So for that to happen, we have to have resources. And those resources bring individuals like Greg, my brother and colleague, Greg Costola, who the Mandela Washington Fellows have titled Uncle Greg. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce Uncle Greg, who is the Assistant Director of Rutgers Global Program and also the Administrative Director of the Mandela Washington Fellows. My brother Greg, please welcome.
Thank you, Usaina. So I am thrilled to be here today and to have all of you here. As others have echoed, this would have been great to have done in person, but I'm just so happy we can do this at least virtually. I've been going through the photos and the names and the chat, and it's along the lines of Magda, I'm getting overclamped, if you guys know that term. It is truly amazing to see people here from 6 years of work putting into this program, and hopefully many more to come. So thank you again. In my true form, I'm going to be very, as you all know, on time and logistical, and we're already over time, of course. So I think we'll move on. I know I see lots of laughing going on, and of course, that's gonna be me. But I think we'll move on. Usaina, is there anyone else that we need to introduce at this point?
We need to introduce Sister Asnat Dende.
So then we'll give Azanath some time, and then I think I'm gonna have a little bit more talk with Joanna.
I just want to thank all the fellows for showing up. Many of you might not know me that well, but I did host quite a few of you during the 4th of July. So I'm so excited and very happy to be part of this program today. And thank you very much, President Holloway, for participating. Thank you, Rick, and all my colleagues. You'll be seeing me later moderating a different program with Joanna. So welcome and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sister Asnat. So when we are dealing with issues of visa and all that, we go crying to her.
Yes, that's my headache, the visa issue.
With our headaches.
Exactly.
But we have other sisters who do the work behind the scene that you may not have encountered directly, but they have been part of this program too. This is Karen Farley, who is there. This is Kim Pernice, who is there. Sister, how are you? Please, you can wave so that they can see all the people who help us. We have another brother of Dr. Rick Lee, who was here before, and I don't see him now. But we have all, this is the goodness of our beloved community and Rutgers Global. And we also have our director of the Center for African Studies, Dr. Janice Sodokov, and her administrative assistant, Christine Waits, who have been really great in trying to help us host every time that we have the Mandela Washington Fellows. Mm-hmm. So even though they could not be here today, they really convey their greetings. And I want to make sure that each one of you know that really they care about you. We all miss you, and they wish you the very best, and are celebrating with us in spirit. So I would like us to move on now to a conversation with the different special panel, leadership in crisis at this
Before we start the panel, Greg and I have a few housekeeping things to let everybody know about. Greg, do you want to start?
So, yep. So we'll go over just some real basic stuff. Again, thank you. I know you guys want to talk to each other. There'll be a little bit of time for that later on. So just keep your mute on during these plenary sessions. The video is great. If you can keep it running, do so, but if it's going to slow down your computer, you are more than welcome to turn off your video, at least in the plenary room. Let's see, the chat feature is going wild, so keep it up. That's great. What else? So registrations we hit 100 participants in the room, so that's great. We had about 150 sign up, so I think some people are coming in and can't stay the whole time. You guys represent about 30 countries. And I saw many of you are not currently on the continent. You're studying, some are in the US, some are in the UK, Germany, UAE, I think someone up in Canada. So it's great that you, and even Australia, someone is currently in Australia. So that's fantastic that you are all over the place and able to call in today. I think that's really it. So just, you know, today is not a one and done type of situation. We do want to keep the conversation going even after today's reunion. We'll hope to do other things like this in the future. But Joanna and I and the rest of the team will come up with exactly what that is and then share it out when it is time.
A couple of other details. We have the plenary sessions, the 2 panels following after this. You'll notice on the event page and also on the PDF that shows the agenda that there are rooms and they are designated with years. So if you cannot resist listening and you need to talk to your friends, you can certainly jump into those rooms and have some conversations that they will be running in parallel with the panels. After the panels are over, those rooms will become themed discussion rooms. So please feel free to use those. You don't have to keep yourself mute in those rooms. You can keep your cameras on as you need. So please feel free to bounce back and forth between them. There's going to be about a 5-minute break in between the plenary sessions, and just so that you know, for your friends who weren't able to join, we have been recording the plenary sessions. So those will be available and we'll let you know how to access them once the reunion is over. The cohort year reunions are not going to be recorded. Okay, so I think we're ready to start. Usaina, you want to open the first panel? And I will share that screen.
Okay, so I'm just so excited to see everybody. It's like a surreal experience. This is so wonderful. Thank you so much, each one of you. So I'm gonna, this is a panel, Leadership in Crisis, led by Professor Kevin Lyons and myself. And please, everybody is welcome to join as well.
Just a couple quick statements before we get started. So this is a panel that's focusing on you. So for this period and this panel and the next panel, it's all about our fellows giving us content. We are going to learn from you how you have been able to respond in this particular panel to this current crisis. And so the 5 fellows that you see on your screen are our panel. We're going to ask them a series of questions, and then they're going to respond so that you get an idea of what they've been able to do as part of this crisis. Now, obviously, all of you have been impacted by the current COVID-19 pandemic, and how you respond is critically important. But this is when you need an extra level of leadership to overcome it. Some of you might have been able to reinvent your business or your enterprise or the way that you work or the way that you work with people. So we are assembling this panel to hear back from them, and then you'll have an opportunity at the end to interact with them as well, and of course in the discussion rooms. So we're going to start off with asking our questions, one fellow at a time, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. So Usaina, we can start off with Funmi and her first question.
So for me, it's really a great honor to see you back. I'm really very happy to see you, Dominique, Mike, Babatunde, and Kiwe, and all the other wonderful fellows. But specific to you now, our first question is, we'd like you to describe the situation that have require you to become a leader in a time of crisis, and to give us an understanding of what are you trying to fill in the gaps in leadership, and your role as a change agent during time of crisis.
My name is Funmi, and I work in Makoko.
has been tagged the world's largest floating slum, and it has about a population of about 300,000 people. It's a closed community, and although it's not so hidden, it's in the city, but it's in a secluded area. So a lot of the people there do not have enough money they are poor, they live in slums. The hygiene conditions there are terrible. They live on dump sites. There are no toilets. They can barely afford to eat. So washing hands every minute is extreme for them. So one of the things I did was to first create awareness, because I realized that there was a lot of misinformation about the COVID-19 situation. A lot of them were saying it's a big man's disease. That means like it's just something that catches people that have come from other countries. So we had to do an awareness and translate preventive measures and everything into their language. We had to translate into local languages and paste posters all around. And then I run a school in the community for vulnerable women, a tailoring school. So from there, we had to start teaching them, first of all, how the virus is spread. And then we taught them all the preventive measures, wear your face masks and all of that. So that was the first thing, create awareness. The second thing that I did was to provide the community with face masks. So my students were bored, they were tired of being at home, and they were hungry. So I raised funds to give them food. First of all, food for the women, for the children, for the volunteers. We gave them food. And then we engaged the students in making the nose masks, face masks. So they wash their hands, they wear their face mask, and then come to class with all the social distancing measures. And then we've made over 1,000 face masks now. And then they were surprised that we paid them. Now, we paid them because they were giving their time. Although they volunteered to do it, they were happy to do it. But we had to pay them because they were giving their time. And they were also hungry. They needed something to do. So we paid them. And then the third thing I did was to, we created hand wash stations, 5 of them, 5 hand wash stations in the community, 2 marketplaces, and in some other areas. We taught them how to wash their hands. And we did it's about 5,000 liters of liquid soap, because it didn't make sense to just give them the hand wash stations and teach them how to do it without providing soap for them. So we taught them how to wash their hands. We engaged some of the touts in the community, the area boys. So we put them in charge of watching over the hand wash stations so that nobody will steal them, of course. So the area boys were the ones in charge of filling the buckets with water and then ensuring that people passing around wash their hands. So those are the 3 things I'll say I've done. And why I did that was because if the virus gets into this place, about 8 people share a room, there are no toilets, the sanitary condition is terrible, it would be a catastrophe because they would not be able to afford health care. That's one. Even if they are able to afford health care, everywhere was on lockdown. So how would they have been able to go to the hospitals? Even if they are able to go to the hospitals, they don't speak English. They speak their local native languages. And that's a major problem for them. So I thought that rather than wait for the problem to escalate, there's a need to prevent. And that's what we did. And they responded very positively. This is really marvelous feedback. You have actually responded to the second question, what kind of decision-making processes did you use? And all these layers of things that usually public health will not integrate. like the question of communication, but communication in what language? So here you are giving us already an incentive to tell our programs here in public health and global health that issues of health literacy in local languages are important, but the issues of security too, an issue of economics surrounding the pandemic. This is really excellent. So what will you do differently?
I think what I would do differently is to create awareness of the slum conditions and the critical nature of their conditions to the general public. Because it seems like everybody was just concerned really about themselves and we're not thinking of the other people in those situations, in those slum communities. And if we don't protect them, we are exposing ourselves, because these people work as drivers, they work as security men, they work as maids in people's houses. So I think it's important that we create awareness for the elite population on the conditions in the slums so that they don't get exposed. I think that's what I'll do more, creating awareness.
So it's really wonderful to hear the multiple layers, how we think of how, basically it's a question of empathy across class, and to see that we are all interdependent. And this pandemic has pushed us to really think of common humanities across class, and also the distribution of resources, and the impact of the person next to me. Who is that person who will save my life and I will save their lives? Professor Kevin Lyons, will you like to say?
So let's switch gears, and this is a topic that I was thinking heavily about during this crisis as well. So I'm going to turn to Dominique, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about your work, specifically in this very vulnerable population that we unfortunately sometimes tend to forget, but they are part of our community, they're part of our society, and everyone should be treated well. So I want to hear a little bit about your situations and how your leadership rose to the top, and then how you were able to, develop the skills necessary to, make this a priority for you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Very happy to see all of you guys here. Well, thank you, Kevin. My line of work, I'm Dominique Chandler from Mauritius Island, Rutgers cohort, Civic Leadership Cohort 2016. I work as a program executive for an NGO that works inside prisons, specifically working with detainees, juveniles, and ex-detainees and ex-juveniles, so providing counseling support, social support to them and to their families. During this crisis, you guys have to know that Mauritius has been on lockdown from the 19th March till the 1st of May, and nobody was allowed to go out for the first 2 weeks. So no one goes to supermarkets or anything. So we're confined at home, and on the first day of confinement, there was mutiny in the central prison. People died. It was crazy. Where I live, I saw big fires coming out of prisons. And we had to step up real quick, since we are the only NGO in the country doing this kind of work, we had to step up quickly and try to find a solution. The first thing we had to do is to try to reassure the authorities and reassure the population as well as the inmates that everything will be okay if they start listening and stop panicking. It was not easy. It took us about a week, and we had to convince the authorities, even the prime minister of the country, that we have to use technology to be able to get in touch with inmates, since we didn't have a right to leave our home. So, Skype was only allowed for foreigners. So we had to make them understand that these human beings had to be listened to and had to be heard and helped. After 1 week, we were able to set up a Skype facility in Mauritius prison while being at home, and have every staff at the NGO connect with the Mauritius prison for 8 hours a day to talk to inmates and to prison officers in private without recording, keeping everything in private with them, and calm things down. It was not easy, not even for us, because we used to have a human touch, be right in front of them, and having them in front of a camera was not an easy thing. And at the same time, we had a lot of families calling us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, asking us about how are their brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, sons doing inside. So we had to take all these emotions and still be professional. And bear in mind that we were only 8 staff to deal with 3,000 detainees and 100 juveniles, boys and girls, men and women, as well as families. So we had to be very well prepared psychologically. And I think that we managed to do it well, since there was no more mutiny. And when I went back inside prison to meet the detainees and talk to them, they were happy to see us and very thankful. At the same time, we had the crisis to have masks for detainees and for prison officers. With this kind of pandemic, we didn't know what was really happening. It was crazy, and there was not enough masks in the country. And I turned to one of the factories, and I just tried and sent them an email asking them that I needed 100 masks at least for officers and detainees who are on the front line. That means officers that are directly inside the prison, not in the officers, and detainees who are working inside prison but have to get in touch with others. We were fortunate to get 1,000 masks to give to the nurses, the doctors, the officers, and detainees inside prison. And the kind of response we got from prison authorities was incredible, and they really thanked us a lot when the prison was open for visits in after May. So this is what we had to do during the time, and we also to deal with food shortage with ex-inmates and their families. A lot of them, well, all of us didn't work. Some of us still had their salaries, just like me. We had the salaries coming to our bank account. But most of them, since they are ex-detainees, they didn't have stable jobs. They take a job here and there, and since every businesses were closed, they had no money to buy food, and prices have risen. I used to pay a certain amount, and when I was paying food during the pandemic, it was multiplied by 5. Just imagine how the prices went up, since people were using this crisis to make more money, and they didn't care about the poor. So we created a network of NGOs, and we were able to get food from several supermarkets, from shops and factories that were given for free to these people. And we were able to, we avoided the fact that they were going to have a famine in this community. It worked well, and at the end of the pandemic, we had more food in our garage than we thought we would have left. We are still giving them, because after the pandemic was officially lifted in Mauritius, because we have no local cases for over 2 months now. So we still are scared of a second wave, but we are still using this network to give food to them because most of them are not working and they are not making any money. So that's how we are trying to handle, and we're still handling the repercussion of lockdown right now in Mauritius.
Dominique, thank you so much for this really powerful, insightful feedback on the weight of the consequences of the lockdown and social distancing. In fact, your conversation with that of Fumi really complement each other, because the site we are dealing with concept of lockdown and social distancing, dealing with prison where there is already confinement and the crowded population. And again, the question of how do we empathize with people who are already not in a position to defend themselves and move in space. And it gives us also a mirror to look at who we are from the outside in terms of distribution of resources and in terms of ethics of care. So really, it's really very instructive, insightful, that you look at the psychological dimension, the emotional dimension, and also the economics, and how actually the people who are outside, who are supposed to be the non-criminal, and actually are criminalizing. We show the face of criminality from the ones, the elite outside, because it becomes privileged to not be confined, right, to not be in prison. But they are producing crimes by producing inflation on people who cannot afford to buy food, cannot afford to have access to medical resources. So really your work and that of Fumi is really very powerful. What will you do that is different now in light of this experience?
Well, during the confinement, I was thinking of some ideas on how to advocate reinsertion in society, how to make people understand that being in prison, in confinement in prison, is not a joyride. So we've been thinking at work that we should try to relate, to make a relationship between confinement that we all have experienced for about 3 months in Mauritius, to the 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 30 years that the person is spending in prison. If we could not, this is the thing we want, if we cannot spend 3 months in our house with all facilities and amenities, how do you think they are living inside prison, behind bars, with just a bed, a toilet, and something that's called food? I'm just saying, it's not really food, but what we're receiving inside prison. This is the advocacy we want to start. We are just waiting for the right moment. And we're going to start that kind of advocacy real soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work you do. Thank you for keeping us really on the ethical ground of what social justice is about. Thank you for insisting that we do not forget the people who are confined. Thank you.
I want to speak now to Babatunde and see same questions. I know that the work that you have done has been incredibly important as well. So I'd like for you to share the situation that forced you to become a leader in your space, and then maybe also talk a little bit about some of the decision making that was happening along the way as well. So we have Babatunde, and then after that we have Ketwe, and then Mike. So same concept, but let's have a little bit of insight to what Babatunde, you were faced with.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, it's so good to be here, Dr. Osana, Dr. Kevin, Dr. Quincy, everyone, majorly. My name is Babatunde Oklola. I'm 2019, just last year, I was at Rutgers, the Civic Engagement, Civic Leadership, program there. Initially, the coronavirus, like we all know it, struck suddenly, and nobody understood it. For a long time, we still call it the novel coronavirus because there's so much that we're still trying to figure out about it. And when it first broke out, in different countries, and it gradually made its way down to African nations, and there was a lot of speculation. I personally, knowing and understanding certain things, dreaded the fact that it would soon get here. And the reaction when it did get here was totally not surprising. You already had a case where there wasn't enough infrastructure in so many parts, where the conversation was majorly about not being prepared about it, a lot of borrowed solutions. One of the things I noticed in my community where I work in Kwara State, Nigeria. It's got a population of about 2.5 to 3 million people. And with diverse group of people. You've got like different languages spoken, different people. So it makes an already problematic situation more complex in terms of the communication. Again, when it came time to reacting to the situation, I didn't think there was enough being done about it in terms of enlightening the people. Of course, there was the initial denial about, okay, this isn't happening. And the general conversations about Africans being immune from it. And over here in a place where you've got a mixture of the rural and urban areas, you had people thinking about, okay, no, this is an elitist situation. If you don't travel, if you don't fly around, it definitely can't come near you. And we had that back and forth. So immediately this got into the country. Even before it came in, I work as the head of programs at my radio station, Royal FM here. The first thing we did was to have that conversation. This is going to be a big problem. How exactly do we want to handle it? As the media, what are we expected to do? What are we supposed to do about this? And we had that agreement about enlightening people. So we've started rolling out PSAs. Again, it was tricky because you have so many angles to cover. You have the sensitization to be done with many diverse groups here, not leaving out some of them. And there's also a limit to the reach of the radio station itself. So initially we started out by rolling out, I led the team in rolling out, PSAs to the diverse listeners out there. And along the way, the issue of misinformation came in and the disinformation, from so many quarters, from the elitist angle, because this was a situation that everyone was trying to grapple with. There was a lot of it. A lot of, with the social media platform, WhatsApp messages circulating, Facebook messages circulating, and everyone was trying to make sense of it. So the messages also had to be directed along those different channels and lines as well. We had to make produce messages in different languages to reach different people. There was a limit to the reach of the radio station. And I remembered something I learned particularly with Dr. Quincy. And I have to mention that had to do a lot with collaboration. And I thought, okay, there's a limit to what we can do. There was a limit to the resources available. How do you get other people, not just my radio station, involved right now? And we had to get in touch with two other radio stations, and we had to be really strategic about it. We chose one in the northern part where the reach of the radio station didn't really get through to. We also chose one in the southern part, bordering Benin Republic there. And that was what we did. And that was beautiful to watch because not only did it also get them thinking along this line, but along the way, I was able to get a grant as well, which sort of helped in the process, and producing more messages. But I think the most important thing before I stop was, the fact that we started up doing something and it turned out to be a reliable platform for, changing the narrative when it comes to misinformation and disinformation. Before then, the government hadn't necessarily been strategic in addressing the people. There was just this once a week program they were up to. But when we got on board and we started treating the many intersections, again, there were people who didn't necessarily believe the issue when it came to just addressing it as a health issue. But when they began to address, to sense the many intersecting issues, like how this affected businesses, how this affected economies, it got people to sit up because either way it affects you one way or the other. Even if you are not a survivor of the coronavirus situation, you pay attention because there's a lockdown. It's affecting your businesses. And it also got the government to think, to become more accountable to the people and transparent. Because we're talking about things like funding. Oh, you just received this fund. What are these funds for? Tell your people what these funds are meant for. And not just that, also putting a face and a voice to this issue. We were the first to get a former coronavirus patient to talk to people. That also changed the belief about all of this. But the most powerful thing was, changing the narrative when it came to misinformation, getting experts to speak about these issues, trusted voices in the societies, the religious leaders, people that the community listened to, so it created that platform and it still continues to do that.
Okay, so thank you very much. I've been slapped in the back of the head that we're way over time, so I'm going to try to help speed this up a little bit. So Kete, we want to hear from you and give us the salient points of your situation and your leadership that went behind it. And then we're going to follow up quickly with Mike, and then I'll pass it over back to Joe. So Kete?
It's good to see you all and to hear your voices. I appreciate this opportunity to be part of this panel hosted by Dr. Osena and Dr. Kevin. My name is Ketchem Shope from Zimbabwe, a fellow from the 2019 cohort. I'm a telecoms engineer and entrepreneur. I have a keen interest in STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and empowering disadvantaged communities to embrace and pursue careers in STEM. As the other fellows have spoken before and alluded to, the COVID-19 pandemic has made us live life and conduct business in a way we have not envisaged before or even thought about before. The lockdown and close of formal and informal markets meant that most families in Zimbabwe had no way of making a living at all. We have partnered with organizations like Child Care Ministries, One Hope, and One Child Matters. These are organizations that provide food and water to approximately 40,000 disadvantaged children daily in Zimbabwe. And due to the lockdown, we've seen that schools have closed, and school closures are associated with learning loss, with more pronounced effects among low-income and disadvantaged families. We are stepping in to ensure that children with potential and interest in STEM can get the resources they need to keep their learning on track. This entails ascertaining that the schools have basic solar kits. There is no constant supply of electricity in most parts of Zimbabwe. There is load shedding, where people sometimes get only about 4 or 2 hours of power in a day. And we've also tried to make sure that the children get study materials. And we're also looking into conducting STEM training for teachers to provide lessons for the children, as this will help in making sure that their learning continues. Thank you. I've tried to be as fast as I can as we're out of time.
Thank you. That was beautiful, and we're going to hear more from you in the discussion rooms as well. So I hate to have you rush, but you do brilliant work, and everyone here on the webcast knows that. So Mike, it's your turn now, and we want to hear the situations and how your leadership came to the fore, and then again we'll turn it back over to Joe after that.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and just the entire team for convening this. I hope I'm audible. Okay, so I'm a medical doctor, Mandela Washington Fellow for 2018, Business and Entrepreneurship. So I had quite a good time with Joanna and Kevin and Magda as we had the program. So the case I think I'm going to share is one that just still speaks to COVID-19. I currently practice as a health finance and health system strengthening expert, offering support to both national and global entities, mainly healthcare, health sector players, just to organize and pay for healthcare. During the event, during this COVID-19 pandemic, our country started feeling the heat of this at the beginning of March. The private sector serves close to 50%, about 45 to 50% of the population. But then the struggle within the private sector was that insurers were not willing to pay for COVID-19 care for patients who had COVID-19 within the private sector. And the insurers on their end felt COVID-19 is expensive and the costs are unpredictable, and so was loss-making on their end. So I was brought in to help support them in terms of crafting a way forward to ensure that services continue despite the current challenges. Getting an echo. So I was brought in to try and help think through and help ensure that there's collaboration between the hospitals and the insurers to ensure that services continue. The challenges or the crisis that existed was that services needed to be delivered, but neither the providers who are the hospitals nor the payers who are the insurers were willing to engage, because either way it was loss-making on their end. But the other challenge that existed is that the client who enlisted my services is a body that brings together the providers, the private sector healthcare players, so both insurers and hospitals. But unfortunately, the mediation team had a strong presence of insurers than the providers. And that essentially made the mediation a bit more skewed than it ought to. And in a mediation situation, perceptions matter and how you communicate matter. So I think what I had to do to ensure that discussions continue is, one, to point out the skewedness of the mediation team and begin to have separate conversations with both parties. And one of the things that I'm proud about is that initially the parties that were very hostile to each other, as of today morning, because it's evening in Kenya now, today morning we managed to convene, to have a convening with them and had a very productive discussion that ultimately we are in the formative stages of having a package that will cater for COVID-19 patients within the private healthcare sector in Kenya. So essentially the key things here were, one, the value of neutrality for the mediation team. Number two, the value of communication between the teams, both the providers and the payers, because all they needed was just a forum that was deemed neutral for both of them to engage without the steam and the pains that they all are experiencing. So that's pretty much what I would share from my experience at the in this COVID season. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mike. Sandy, you want to close it out, and then Joe, you can take over.
Dr. Mike, thank you so much. And Tunde, thank you so much, both of you, for giving us the perspective from communication, journalism, and also the medical angle, looking at how insurance companies now interfere with the question of access to the right care. And from the point of view of media and communication, we see again the role of misinformation, disinformation, and how media is playing a major role as a positive, as well as forcing both civil society, government, and patient to have information the right way it should be. So we thank you for taking this great responsibility. But it's important that we acknowledge the presence of another leader of a global who does the work behind the scene, who is Sister Bola Ibrahim, who is here also to welcome you and joining in this celebration. So thank you, Sister Bola, for joining us. Adupe. So I turn to my sister Joanna to help us.
So now we're going to start the panel on the successful grant stories. I'm a moderator along with Asnath Dande, who you were introduced to earlier. I just want to say a few words about Asnath, though. She was very humble in introducing herself. She is the director of the international at Rutgers Global for International Scholars and Faculty Services. So she deals quite a bit with the visas and all the issues that are going on right now. She also happens to be the founder of the Hitachi Development Initiative that fosters economic development and empowerment for vulnerable and disadvantaged women and girls in rural Kenya. And she's been working on this also with a 2017 fellow, Victor Charo. Let's get started. Asnath, do you want to start with the first question?
Sure. So my first question will go to Mensa. As a founder of a small NGO myself, which supports women and girls who are economically advantaged, as you've heard already, which is based in Kenya. I know, and I'm sure that everyone participating in this event will agree with me that the ability to obtain grants is very critical in order to advance the important mission and work that we do. So with that, I'd like to ask Mansu the first question. Mansu, could you please share with us how you heard about your grant, which you received from Tony Elemelu Foundation?
Why don't you move on to the next one, Asna?
Candice. Okay. Hello, Candice.
Hi.
Oh, great. Wonderful. At least you're in here. So I wanted to ask you, I know that you've received a good amount of grants from USADF, and you started seeking that while you were here as a fellow in 2018. But my question to you is about how did you know that this was the right opportunity for you? And how did you go about that in concluding that this was the right opportunity?
All right. So like you already said, I found out about the grant while on the fellowship at Rutgers. And I felt this was the right opportunity for me because I was early on in my entrepreneurship journey. I'd already started by bootstrapping, but I needed some funding to scale up. And basically the USADF grant was offering that. So I felt like what they were after was in line with what I needed. So I applied.
Okay. So when you did decide to apply, how did you prepare before submitting your application? Were there some things that you could share as having been very crucial in your journey to applying for this grant?
I think the most crucial thing for me was Dr. Quincy's grant writing, because I'd never written a grant before. I was not within the civic space, so to speak. So having worked in health, I'd personally always just been in the service delivery aspect of it. So I'd never written a grant. So having gone through Dr. Quincy's grant writing for me was the biggest thing that helped me prepare, understand what grant writing was all about, what I needed to do, what was required of a grant. And having an expert in the field and someone who'd applied for grants and been successful, I think also really helped me. I also got support when I got back to Zimbabwe from one of the USADF in-country partners, an organization here in Zimbabwe that went through the whole grant writing process with me step by step, reading through my application, sending it back to me with guides as to how I can make it better. So that's really what helped me.
That's great. I mean, you're doing an amazing job. You're co-founder of an organization which brings sonography and ultrasound services to rural, remote, and disadvantaged communities, which is really wonderful. So I'm sure you had to prepare your organization to apply for this grant. Was there anything that you could share that you had to prepare in terms of your organization, like what processes, what was needed to be in place before you could apply?
Okay, so besides being registered with the company's registrar in our country, being a health service organization, there are several other registrations that we had to comply with. The Health Professions Authority, the Allied Health Professions Council, all the health insurance organizations and all that type of thing. So that was actually quite a lengthy process to eventually become, to comply with all those requirements. So for our organization, that's one of the major things we had to do, basically comply, because the USADF wanted a company that was 100% compliant. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Joanna?
Sure, let's, well, first of all, it looks like Mensa is back.
Oh,
yes?
Okay.
And given that he said he was having a little bit of internet connectivity problems, why don't we make sure we get him in case we lose him again?
Okay, hello Mensa, nice to see you back. Great. So Mensa, I had a question earlier, when you're offline, that you did receive the Tony Ilumelu Foundation back in 2019, I believe. Question to you, I know that getting grant is very critical in this we do. And I just wanted to ask you, how did you hear about this grant opportunity?
I am facing a little bit of challenge in regards to my internet connection. So you may excuse me if I happen to break. My voice actually happens to break sometimes. So regarding the grant, Johanna, I first of all heard of it in the year 2015. And at that time, I wasn't even a Mandela Washington Fellow yet. So I applied for it that first time. And it is actually called the Tony Lumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Program. And I know of a few colleagues, also a few fellows who have benefited from it, even before myself. And upon becoming a Mandela Washington Fellow and wanting to spread much more my impact and also make it sustainable, I thought of starting a business. And that was the time for me to really think through the process and apply for the grant. So what I did was to master my industry and make sure that I go around it 360 degrees in order to understand all of the insights and everything that I need to take a hold on to be able to successfully write the application and eventually get it. And this also was a result of my first failure in 2015, because at that particular moment, I must confess that I lacked the necessary knowledge around grant writing. And attending the Mandela Washington Fellowship in 2017 helped me to understand much more what it takes to really write a powerful and award-winning grant. Thanks to Dr. Quincy's workshops And eventually, I applied everything I learned there and applied for it and got the grant.
So what is the process of looking for these grants? Because obviously you heard about this opportunity somehow. I mean, what is that process? How do you find out, about these opportunities out there? How do you search?
Yeah, there are three websites that I often look up. I often check, and those websites are meant to present the opportunities for fellowships, entrepreneurship, and so on to the African community. So I would look for that every single day. And that's where I found most of the opportunities I've been able to apply for. So the website, the first one is www.opportunitiesforafricans.com. The second one is www.opportunitydex.org. And the last one, which I didn't really mention while I sent you an email, why I replied to the questions you asked, was www.youthhub.com.
And thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that, everyone that's in this forum has their own story about how they get to learn about these opportunities. I've had many different stories, even with my own experience in my own organization, how we go about that. So I know you do, important work with youth, which is really great. And that resonates with all of us, including myself, who works very closely with school girls, the girls especially in secondary schools. And of course, getting money, and the COVID period has just become such a challenge, such a crisis for even the students. With pregnancies and all kinds of things going. So mentorship has been my big thing. So thank you very much for sharing that. And I'm sure that for those of you who probably connected yesterday on the grant writing workshops, I'm sure you have a lot, all kinds of stories on how to go about these processes. So I appreciate that. And, let's continue doing the good work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mensa. Thank you, Asnath. The next two panelists, I want to talk specifically about some of your experiences with how many grants you have written and about the relationship between the agencies. So Kudzi, I'd like to start with you. You, like many of the fellows, have a very good relationship with USADF. In fact, you have an incredible relationship with USADF. So could you say a few words about, how the first grant that you wrote, and then how the relationship developed and what you've been able to do since then?
Okay, great. Thanks, Joanna, and hello, everyone. It's good to be here. So Kudzi, I'm Kudzi, 26 Mandela Washington Fellow in the Business and Entrepreneurship track. Just to get straight to your question, Joanna, I would say after the fellowship, I, naturally developed a relationship with the local USADF office here in Zimbabwe, in Harare. Basically, I started off by just paying them a visit, just got to know of the people. And, they are very receptive of Mandela Washington Fellows, gladly. And then, I was taken straight to the program manager for Zimbabwe. And then a lady called Doreen, then we naturally developed a relationship. And, then she said, obviously, we need to keep in touch. We're very happy with what you're doing, and we would really love to support you as much as, we support a whole lot of other Mandela Washington Fellows. So, we had, I would say, more of a very close relationship with the office. Whenever opportunities came through, they either, texted me on WhatsApp or sent an email, right? So it was sort of like a, two-way process. And whenever I thought I had an idea or an exciting idea or an interesting idea, I always ran past through them to see how they'll probably be able to assist. So basically, I would say that's how the relationship developed, up to a point whereby they sent me an opportunity that, they believed, it really suited the kind of work that I was doing. And fortunately, it did. And, I actually felt that, this is the right opportunity for me, and they followed it up with a call. It just shows the kind of relationship that we had to say, what, we really think you should take up this opportunity. It was a renewable energy opportunity, but focusing mainly on, underserved communities, of which at that time I was developing a model, to deliver renewable energy solutions to underserved communities and, disadvantaged communities. So there were a lot of, there were a lot of right things, that I was doing and that was in line with that grant. And I applied for that grant and I got the grant, which was great.
So how long has your relationship been with USADF? Just sort of a one-time, or have you been working with them for a number of years and reapplied for different grants?
Like I said, we finished off our Mandela Washington Fellowship in 2016. That's when I started the relationship with them. Now we're in 2020, which is three plus years, coming on to 4. So the good thing is, once you get a USADF grant, most of these grants, they are not like, the project is not usually a once-off project. It's a project which has got a couple of milestones. It can take 6 months, 12 months. My project specifically was for 18 months, and it's still running up to now because we're scaling it up. So the relationship naturally continues, because you're always writing reports, you're always updating them. They are always checking up on you to see how the project is going. And they're always also, giving you more opportunities. I would say one of the most interesting activities that happened sometime earlier this year is we had some of the senior officers, including the USADF president, coming to Zimbabwe to meet the fellows and to, see the work that they did. We had a dinner, we had a very good time. We told their stories. We told our stories. They told us their vision of, Mandela Washington fellow entrepreneurs, and it was a great opportunity, which also opened other, channels and doors to other opportunities as well. So even this year with COVID-19, we had another grant. They didn't even ask us to apply or anything. They just said, what? We believe you are doing great things, but you are entrepreneurs. You are, facing a hard time due to COVID-19. We're going to give you a little bit of money, to make sure that you get through the process and you keep your businesses afloat. So it's an ongoing relationship, which I believe will continue until I don't know. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. I know that when Asnath and I were talking yesterday about how we were going to run this panel, we decided specifically that we weren't going to talk about the numbers. But I think in your case, it is actually worth mentioning the scale of what you have been able to accomplish with USADF, if you don't mind, letting everybody know. Because I want to make the point that if you find an agency that really believes in you, that is a good match for what you are doing, the relationship can evolve and can really support you. So do you mind sharing that with us, Quincy?
Yeah, not a problem. If it's something that will, serve to inspire a couple of other fellas, that'd be great.
I hope so.
Yeah. So basically, the first grant that I got from USADF is it's 100,000 USD grant, so it's 100K in total. So I've accessed up to 80% of that grant so far, meaning I've accessed, just over 80,000 USD. And the COVID relief grant was 5,000 USD. But because, the other thing that obviously USAID looks at is how you manage the grant and your reporting structures, your accounting systems, and basically all your business systems, because obviously you then need to step up when it comes to really, operating your business and the reporting and the accounting systems and all that. And after they're satisfied that you're complying with most of the accounting standards and the fraud policy, everything is in line, then you actually qualified for more grants. So they give you some kind of a certification that now you can access plus 100. We're talking about numbers 200, 250K. So these are the numbers that my company can now qualify when it comes to USAID. Yeah.
That's great. Congratulations. That's really wonderful. I think that's another good point that you brought up, that keeping your accounts, keeping your books straight is actually a key sometimes to increasing and making your relationship with the funding agency. So I want to sort of move on from that, and I'd like to ask Opialua Ashimi a question about her grant writing experiences. She's worked on quite a number of grants. So, Ope, do you want to talk a little bit? I was actually quite amazed to hear how many grants you had applied for since you were here in 2018.
Yes, since 2018 till now, I've applied to 30, and 6 has been successful so far. I'm expecting
30.
30, yes, 30 applications, and I'm still expecting results for about 4 or 5, so that's still pending. But it has been an amazing journey for me. The reason why I had 30 applications is basically because I was doing more than one thing in different sectors. I'm into the healthcare sector. I was also into energy, renewable, and waste management. So, I mean, after leaving Rutgers, the whole experience basically just was like, I came into Rutgers with health and with solar energy, and then I was looking at incorporating waste management. And so that became another angle that I was working on. And based on that, I decided to also partner with one of our fellows, Nini, and also Brown, who were Nini is an engineer, and Brown has even more experience in waste recycling from his own city. And that was where I decided, okay, I think about 5 of the grants were basically dedicated to that project. What was really interesting and eye-opening for me was looking back at what I was told at the embassy before coming to Rutgers. They said, make sure you have an open mind. Forget about whatever you're doing before, be open to learn new things. So I came to Rutgers, I unlearned everything I had in my head, and I learned new things. Then I came back home, and then I had to relearn what my context was telling me. And so I still had more room to experiment and apply, and then see what the market would tell me, whether the market was ready for that or not. One particular one in waste recycling that I'm really happy to share was about Grant Challenges Canada. Most of the time when we apply for grants, if you're not selected, they don't give you feedback about what went wrong. Grant Challenges Canada, on the day before the submission, I was actually like, am I sure? I don't even know, and I'm not related to any agency related to Grant Challenges Canada. Should I even apply? So I was speaking to an Austrian pilot, and the pilot was like, what do you want to do? And I showed them I want to build this toilet and this waste management system with this energy system. And then he was like, oh, this is how we do it in the plane. So assume it's a plane, and this is how you should think about it. So because he got really interested in the project, I decided to submit. The feedback, although we weren't selected, but the feedback I got from the 5 panelists that read our application, each one of them mentioned what we were really strong at and what we were not so good at. So like they told us about the fact that technically we were a very strong team. They were really impressed that from Africa they were getting this application. It was a novel solution. And then somebody said their main concern had been that we were not yet a commercial team enough to be able to commercialize this application. And so maybe if in our application we had said, we are willing to license this technology once it's built, or we were willing to partner with a known organization that is already into commercialization of such projects, then we would have stood a stronger chance, because that was part of their scorecard and criteria in rating application.
So let me ask you, Ope.
They went a step further to even give us a list. I'm listening, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm curious about, for the grants that you got some feedback on, that's
Yes.
great that they actually gave you feedback, but you're right that many grants, they don't give you any feedback.
Yeah.
So for those situations, did you have a mentor that you worked with, or someone, did you have a team who was working together to write these grants? And how did you deal with, when you didn't get a good result?
Okay, so when I didn't get a good result, I actually just called a friend of mine who, when I feel down, I just shared what's in my head. And it was like, what was the feedback? Did you get it? Because there was some that I didn't get the feedback. And it was like, well, at least you got a feedback. So next time, if you're applying to an agency, make sure it's the kind of agency that gives you feedback, because then if you do something wrong, you know what's next to do. And so we are confident to continue to build, basically, because we know what we are lacking and where we're going forward. So it's basically don't get down or depressed when you get a no. Try and get a feedback and then know what you can build on it. And also just share with your team, for example, what were the shortcomings. Like I would share with Nini and I would share with Brown, this is what we did, this is the application. We didn't get in on this time, but I'm going to apply for this next time. I just basically held myself accountable and I made them hold me accountable to share results. So I didn't feel in my head I was all alone dealing with this just by myself. So I did that as well.
That's great. It's pretty tremendous. I think we actually have time for a few questions, even though we're a few minutes over time. Greg, do you have any questions?
Nothing's in the comments so far. Mensa, if you are still on, I know you listed 3 websites, and I think that would be useful if you're able to put those in the chat, just so everyone has access to them. But if anyone does have any additional questions for any of our panelists, you are welcome to put them in the chat.
And I think somebody else also shared a grant platform.
Yes,
Silver, yes.
also shared something.
Asnath, do you have any questions for these panelists?
I think maybe there's one question that I'd like to follow up on with the Candace. I'm just wondering, like, do you still have an ongoing relationship with the USADF? I mean, we heard from Kudzi how he's maintained the relationship, and just wondering for everybody else if how you're navigating that.
I was saying, because I'm still receiving my grant, it's not quite complete yet. I do still have a relationship with the USADF, and I actually liked listening to Kudzi because what he said really encouraged me, and it actually, I just was saying in my head, wow, the USADF office in Harare, they're really good, because the lady Doreen that he mentioned has also been, always communicating with me over the past number of months, and she recently actually brought to my attention another grant that the USADF was availing. So, she said to me, "Oh, have you heard about this?" And I didn't know about it. I had no idea about it. And then she says to me, apply. She sent me the forms, and I've already submitted it. The deadline was a week ago, I think. So I submitted it to her, and then she's in constant communication, and she has said this one will take a little longer, but I'll keep you in the loop. Mm-hmm. So like Kudzi said, it's about fostering that relationship. So I believe I will foster this relationship with the USADF. Yeah.
Nice. So just a quick follow-up again. Are you looking, and how are you looking elsewhere, or you're just continuing to exhaust what you already have? And another one was, is how do you within your organization prepare to apply? I mean, how do you coordinate, the grant application within your own organization?
All right. So about looking, I also am constantly looking. But the thing with my looking, because I'm in the health sector, I have to look specifically for, health grants, and some of the resources that were shared by the other fellow, like Opportunitydex and Opportunities for Africans, those are some of the sites that I also constantly look onto. And another area, I'm also a part-time lecturer at one of the local universities. So I'm in a research club there, and they're constantly sharing, research grants and grants that are applicable to health as well, because we're in the school, the College of Health Sciences. So I get a lot through that as well. Yes. And then what was your other question?
How do you prepare within your organization? I'm sure a lot goes on, and if you have individuals, working in your organization, I'm sure you engage different people within the organization to provide information for different areas.
Exactly. So because there are different aspects of the grant that's required, we've got the accountant who's going to do the financials. So the accountant will get the financials ready. I love to write. So I actually then put the things together and write the final grant application. Yeah. So different people in the team can be allocated different tasks, and then we put everything together until we have the final grant application.
Nice. Thank you. That was very helpful. I'm sure it does resonate with many of us, and hopefully, it did provide some helpful information that could help, all of us who are trying to apply for these grants.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of common threads that everyone has spoken about. One is getting feedback. The other is really doing some research on your grant, and keeping good books to make sure that you get the next opportunity. So I think, Greg, I think we've gone through the questions. I see that Hope has answered Salisu about some of the grants that she applied for. So I think that concludes this panel. Thank you all very much. And I hope that you all stay in touch with each other and mentor each other, because I think that will also give you a little bit more success with your grant writing.
So once again, it's really a great honor to have the opportunity to see each one of you again. And I do hope that we continue to maintain ties. And what happened today with this beautiful reunion is that we get an opportunity to see that you are taking your leadership to higher level of commitment. It is not only in a moderate, there is no moderate or small crisis, but this COVID pandemic is testing the whole world. And the stories that you have shared about how you are going about it are stories of great learning for us on this side. And we are going to continue carrying it in our own teaching, in our own research, in our own ways of doing leadership and management in the global north, as well as the way we engage with Africa. And so for me, I just want to say also on behalf of the colleagues from the Center for African Studies and Rutgers broadly, and the New Jersey community that miss you so much. We are so grateful to you for your generosity once more to come with graciousness and dignity to offer lessons, to share them with a lot of humility. You did not hide the complexity, the challenges that you are confronting, but you are dealing with, but you are transcending. So I want to say thank you. Please let's keep engaged. Please don't forget to continue mentoring the younger ones. Continue to think of organizations that you have created. When you move up, if you do not cultivate a younger one, or even a peer to take over, the institution that you worked so hard to create will disappear. So don't do that. So this is why for me, it was very important to bring back our seniors. Again, the president of the university came, the vice president of our university global came, Dr. Quincy came, Her Excellency Abena Busia is here, Dr. Kevin Lyons, Dr. Joanna Bernstein, Professor Magda, Asnat Dende, Bola, Ibrahim, Karen Fowley, Rick, Dr. Rick Lee, Greg, Uncle Greg. In African tradition, when you say uncle, it's a big deal. So I say Uncle Greg, Kim Pernice, every single person who have met you and who have heard about you, continue to see you in awe. And I just want to reiterate that to you. We are very grateful to you for the time you have given us. And please, we continue to pray for you. May God bless you in everything that you do, in your private life, community life, and may God continue to take you to the greater heights. And let's remain together in peace, in good health, and let's stay safe. Much love to each one of you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Everyone, I want you to know that this is not quite the end of the reunion. This is the end of the plenary sessions. And I want you to know that the breakout rooms will stay open so that you can still network with everybody. I know that I'm going to stay in the plenary room if people want to chat in the plenary room. I may move around to some of the other years as well. But Craig, anything else you want to add to that?
Yep, I just put links to the various breakout rooms. They instead of by year now, we are doing them by topics, so you can check them out. Again, these are on the event page and in the PDF, hyperlinked. But you are welcome to stay in the plenary room if you don't want to go into one of the themed networking rooms. I will be here like Joanna for a little bit. Yeah, I think that's it. I think, you know, stay as long as you need to, as long as you'd like to discuss with other fellows. One of the reasons we've done it this way is because so many of you have similar topics of interest in similar fields, but you're in different years, so maybe you didn't meet each other. So a 2014 fellow can meet a 2018 fellow from the same background interests. So.
And I also just want to say that I cannot believe how many of you showed up. I am floored. I just can't, you know, I don't even have words for this. So thank you all. I think you all are the smartest people I know. There is no question. So let's keep in touch.
Mm-hmm.